In the Ripple SEC case, the SEC has submitted a whole new motion. We'll go over SEC in detail in this video because, in all honesty, it was one of the worst SEC filings I've ever seen. And it appears that they are losing all sense of reason and that they are becoming utterly desperate. I also want to discuss a significant market event that will happen the following week, was just announced, and actually has to do with holding Gary Gensler responsible. Make sure to stay for that since that is something we have been expecting for a very long time. Last but not least, the market is currently undergoing a significant turn. This is incredibly optimistic for cryptocurrencies and growth assets, even if it was just issued a few minutes ago. Keep watching until the very end of the video because you won't want to miss it. Now, to begin this video, I'd like to discuss a recent motion that the SEC just filed in the Ripple SEC case. The SEC's apparent desperation makes this situation interesting right now. They also seem to be very upset with Judge Torres for essentially supporting Ripple throughout the entire case. Yet, they present arguments in this matter that aren't even consistent with the primary grounds on which they filed this lawsuit. I want to briefly review what this has to do with before we break that down in a moment. If you have been following this channel, you are aware that we have been discussing motions that Ripple submitted to this case over the past few weeks. These motions essentially argued that fair notice is not important and shouldn't be taken seriously. In essence, Ripple was stating that if they were to lose this case, they would. The SEC intervened to try to thwart Nance's attempt to purchase Voyager, an insolvent cryptocurrency exchange, and Ripple also submitted another document pertaining to the Voyager bankruptcy case. Now that the Voyager Binance bankruptcy case has reached a conclusion, the judge in that case has essentially gone to the SEC and asked, "Why are you attempting to stop Nance from buying Voyager?" According to what I understand, this has the best likelihood of returning all of the customers' money and making the Voyager depositors whole again. At this point, the SEC intervened and stated, Well, really, we might consider this to be a securities violation. Hence, in our opinion, you shouldn't permit Binance to purchase Voyager." The judge then said, "You can't just tell me you think it might be a securities violation, thus I should prohibit this deal." To laughter from the SEC staff. The finest option for the customers is this package. You are responsible for safeguarding investors. You can't just show up here and make assumptions about a possible securities violation and expect me to take them seriously. Tell me what you believe the securities violation to be, or stop talking. And the SEC effectively refuses to disclose the specifics of the securities violation. "Oh, we might believe the VGX token to be a security," they said, but in typical SEC fashion, they declined to elaborate on what exactly made the VGX token a security. Even though a lot of what I just stated was paraphrased, if you were paying attention to this and the lawyers who were reporting on it, you would have known that the majority of them were astounded by how tough this judge was being on the SEC. Many people didn't anticipate that this judge would be so harsh with the SEC. And throughout the entire process, this was something that was particularly recognized. With that in mind, I'll read you a passage from the SEC filing from today where they effectively disputed the information provided by Ripple. You'll see that the SEC is attempting to change the story with utmost desperation. Pay attention to this since it was created by SEC lawyers in an unsuccessful attempt to advance their unconvincing fair notice case. They blatantly mischaracterized the Voyager bankruptcy court declarations and extracted key lines out of context. The SEC is effectively alleging that the Ripple lawyers are lying, which is what makes this case so intriguing. The absence. Nothing in this was ever said by your bankruptcy court. Although most of us read what was said in Voyager, the judge made it very clear that the status of these cryptocurrencies is entirely unclear and that the SEC is confusing the market. This contradicts Ripple's fair notice defense. In essence, the SEC is hoping that Judge Torres won't conduct the necessary research to determine the actual standards set by the judge in the Voyager case. Judge Torres has been on top of everything in this case, so I believe that the SEC's strategy was quite desperate. I know 100% she will attend the Voyager hearing and discover that the SEC is being truthful. The SEC is literally claiming that Ripple is misrepresenting what happened in the Voyager case when it was exactly what everyone saw in this document, which is a fantastic example of the SEC using desperate measures. Now, the SEC actually tries to spin it in a different direction by claiming, yeah, well, not only is Ripple misdescribing it, but the problems at hand are also completely different. I'll accept that the problems now are substantially different. It's a very distinctive situation. But in the end, Ripple's is merely saying, hey, the SEC is suing us, saying XRP is a security. We're saying they never informed us that, and the status of these digital assets is unclear. Or simply attempting to persuade everyone to admit the guidelines are unclear. The rules are ambiguous, as the Voyager case's judge acknowledged. The SEC attempted to deflect attention from this by claiming that something quite different was happening in the instance of Ripple, which was essentially offering XRP to ordinary public investors. This is a completely different situation as a result, and Ripple can work around that. The SEC's statement is intriguing, however, because it makes no mention of any specific Ripple sales that they believe violated any securities laws. I'm not even certain, as far as I know, that Ripple actually provided XRP directly to individual public investors. Nevertheless, the SEC explicitly states in the highlighted text I currently have on my computer screen that Ripple provided XRP to public investors in violation of securities laws. Even if this assertion is true, I'm not sure. The SEC has utterly lost track of what they were even contending in this case, and their arguments are nearly impossible to follow. The SEC clearly did not prove anything in their case. They are essentially just building a fresh case, document by document. It has absolutely no coherence. In all honesty, it's one of the worst examples I've ever seen. And the most amusing aspect of it all is the SEC's position, which is basically, believe me, bro, that there was no coherent fact-finding process where the SEC assembled a thorough case to present to the public. Due to this, we consider XRP to be a security. Instead, each and every piece of information we received from the SEC pointed to distinct elements and circumstances that were never connected. And the SEC provided us with a jumble of contradictory facts and statements that, in the end, failed to form a coherent argument. In my opinion, Judge Torres will be able to see right through such things. My mind is blown by how far the SEC went with this. I mean, the frailty of their argument really astounds me. I assumed they would have something by now. Yet, as you can see here, the SEC is sort of confirming this in their own paperwork. Hey, did Ripple even approach violating securities laws? If the rules were followed, they would have had to sell directly to investors. And you didn't provide any evidence that any sales were made to investors. What laws did they then break? The SEC's thinking in this case is really difficult to comprehend, while Ripple's arguments have been clear. They made sense and were integrated into a larger image. It hasn't been done by the SEC. And I just don't see how they could possibly win this case. I guess since I only intended to briefly discuss the SEC filing, let's move on and discuss a significant event that will be happening the following week. It's a big deal. For a while now, I have been asking for this to happen because it is necessary. Finally, Gary Gensler will be in front of the House. It's about time. The Democrats who elected Gary Gensler to office were actually perilously close to holding him accountable more quickly than the Republicans who currently hold office. So, that would have been extremely awkward for a gathering when a new day is being discussed. But nevertheless, it's occurring. I suppose I shouldn't moan too much. Now, am I optimistic? We will learn something from this hearing. I hope I'm wrong, but it's unlikely. The issue with the way these hearings are set up is that each individual asking Gary Gensler a question has 5 minutes, and because he speaks so slowly and expertly sidesteps inquiries, he finally just gets around all of them. Gary Gensler will eventually need to have something to present to Congress. As of now, he has nothing. The general consensus is that Gary Gensler would want to finish this case by Wednesday. Sadly for this argument, though, I simply don't see any scenario in which the SEC will settle this issue at this point until there is a summary judgment, so that's going to be out of his control most certainly. We will now watch to see if he is questioned about digital assets. He probably will. Personally, I think he can get out of a lot of the questions, but there are some that he won't be able to get out of, like FTX. Now, one thing I wanted to bring up, and this is an intriguing thought I had, is that I believe the SEC actually brought their case against FTX so that Gary Dent could use it as an explanation when he testified before Congress or went before the public. He is not obligated to respond to inquiries about FTX because there is active litigation. We'll have to wait and see how that develops. But in either case, he will feel the pressure. Hopefully this will lead to something. Let's see what happens. But it's unquestionably a step in the right direction. I'm a little pessimistic right now about getting any positive outcomes from it. I hope to be proven wrong, though. The Federal Reserve is the last crucial topic we need to discuss for the market. For those who have been paying attention, the Federal Reserve has been tightening the money supply over the last few quarters while doing little. And a large part of the reason why cryptocurrencies started to decline along with regular markets is due to this. Simply put, QT is not made for our system. And frequently, when the Federal Reserve tries to implement QT, they just end up breaking things, much like the banks did the other week. But as of right now, the Federal Reserve has abruptly stopped QE and has resumed QE, which is absolutely shocking. And that's the line that goes back up to the Federal Reserve, which makes a big deal about QT and how they must continue to develop it in the future. However, they have already erased the majority of the QT they spent so much time creating in a matter of weeks with the new QE policy. They're leaving. None of what I just said sounded like a foreign language. Just keep in mind that the Federal Reserve will try to do what the Federal Reserve tried to do to me: tighten the money supply in an effort to reduce inflation. In an effort to reduce inflation, the Federal Reserve tried to restrict the availability of money. However, by tightening things up, they really caused more damage. To try to free up the monetary system, they are essentially making what appears to be an emergency swing back to quantitative easing. Assets benefit greatly from this. This is what we require for the price of cryptocurrencies to recover. And it coincides with some extremely bullish events, such as the resolution of the Ripple SEC case. In order for XRP to really take off, we need to be in a monetary policy framework that is favorable to it. If we can combine the fact that we are returning to quantitative easing with a significant victory in the Ripple SEC case, that would be ideal. Let me just say that it is the best case scenario. And I never even took that into account. I believe that QE was off the table and that we would remain in QT for a few more years. What we are observing indicates that it is over, and a return to QE would be extremely bullish for the markets. Anyway, I really appreciate you being here. I hope this update was enjoyable. Please remember to like and subscribe if you did. For the time being, it truly means a lot.